Hello and welcome into Hoosier Gameday, brought to you by the Hoosier Network. My name is Noel Fary. Alongside me is Liv Clements. And Liv, another rough game for the Hoosiers this past weekend against Michigan, but didn't really surprise anyone.
No, I mean, no one's expecting IU to, blow Michigan out the water, right? I mean, Michigan's been really dominant this season, so I don't think it was expected much out of IU. I think that game was pretty much how it was supposed to go.
Yeah. You know, overall, I think there was a little bit of hope when that touchdown pass was thrown and you take the early lead. People were really surprised, I think. The reaction was nice to see. But overall, you know, it's a game that you kind of just have to put behind you at this point in the season.
Right.
And you knew you were going to have to do that early
Right.
on.
I mean, new offensive coordinator was going to be a big deal for IU. We really didn't know offensively what they were going to do. I mean, you switch up things. QBs were still a struggle. I just think IU needs to put it in the past, move on to Rutgers' homecoming game.
Well, we're going to bring on our first special guest to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that Michigan game. Welcome on, Ben, back into the studio with us for the second time this season. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's take a look back at this Michigan game for Indiana. You know, not too many people expected good things for Indiana, but honestly, they started off the game hot and with a lot of life in them. What do you think allowed them to get that first spark and get that first touchdown?
Well, I think what we saw with Indiana is just something you're going to see with a lot of teams that are major underdogs, especially within a conference with two teams that know each other very well. You have to get creative. And that's what Indiana did a lot in their first few drives, and then especially with that touchdown, you saw the little trick reaction, Donovan McCulley passing it to Jalen Lucas for the touchdown. So I think the first quarter is, you might say it's not as expected as people think, but those kind of things happen in games like that. But overall, more of what we expect, especially in the second half when I think the defense, you see this a lot of times when you play a top 5 team in the country. The defense, I don't want to say give up, but they lose a lot of energy when you're losing by that much, and then the games just kind of get inflated in that second half. Yeah.
Would you say overall going into this, J.J. McCarthy, there was some talk here and there that, is he one of the better quarterbacks in college football? Is he not? Is he a little overrated? Do you think with this game he had a really, really solid performance? Do you think this kind of solidifies him as one of those top guys?
I think it's easy to say that. Right now I think we're waiting on really Michigan strike the schedule to pick up a lot of bigger games and more competitive games in the back half of their schedule. They haven't had the toughest schedule yet. But you can't blame J.J. McCarthy for that. He does have a lot of weapons around him, but he leads a very good Michigan offense. And it's a program that for the longest time has always been good on defense and always been almost there. But finally, the last few years, that offense has picked it up and finally been able to make it a complete team.
Who would you say on this Indiana team moving forward, after a season like this, you might be losing some people in the transfer portal overall. Who would you say are people that, maybe even going into next season, this stretch of the season, are going to be those difference makers for IU? We've seen Donovan McCulley make a little bit of a step in these more recent games. Christian Turner for Indiana has been relatively solid. Who do you look out for on this team?
We've seen a lot of different guys get carries for Indiana in the backfield. Jalen Lucas, who was going to be RB1, RB2, kind of taking a different role, only had 2 carries. A lot of that slot receiver role we saw against Michigan. Henderson obviously hurt. I like Trent Howland. He was coming into the season as RB4, but he's shown a little bit of character. He actually led Indiana in rushing against Michigan. He's somebody that has shown some potential, and I think if Indiana wants to have a strong offense moving forward, he's going to need to be a big part of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Indiana came up short against Michigan, but this weekend they've got Rutgers, Ben. I want to know what your score prediction is for this homecoming weekend.
I think it's a close one. I think it's a high-scoring game. I think Indiana's offense gets a little more creative. Like I said, we don't know who's coming out as quarterback. There's the Taven Jackson, Brendan Sorsby war that's kind of coming back up. Even Dexter Williams, who's been questionable for the last couple of weeks, he's been warming up on the sidelines in full pads as of late. So I think I think a lot of it depends on who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm going to call a close game and a high-scoring game. I'm going to say Rutgers 31-27.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. Let's get Liv back on to take a look a little bit closer into that Rutgers game this weekend.
Back into the studio today, Noel, Rutgers homecoming game.
Yeah.
Big game for IU. I mean, big game for the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, we love a homecoming game. Looking at Rutgers, though, so far, of course it's a big game for them. I mean, potential being bowl eligible after this game with 6 wins. That's going to be huge for them. But I mean, IU still, I feel like, has some chance in this game. For Rutgers to continue, it's going to be hard for them, right? You have OSU, Penn, Iowa, Maryland, all top teams. will this kind of hurt them with the potential of being bowl eligible if they lose against IU? Because, I mean, it's fair to say that really this is probably the easiest game they have for the rest of the season.
Yeah. No, I definitely do think that this is the easiest game that they have for the rest of the season. And if you lose a game like this against Indiana, I mean, not only are you going into the hardest part of your schedule, where it's going to be tough for anybody to go in and pick up a win, but that is a huge morale killer right there. Losing against Indiana, who hasn't done anything this season, to say the least. Now, it's going to take a lot for IU to come away with a victory here, but I think if Indiana is somehow able to put together the trick plays, put together their first good game really in a long time, then yeah, Rutgers is going to be scrambling down the stretch. I
mean, I agree, and I also think what's such a big deal is IU has to find more morale, right? Yeah. They have to come together as a team. I mean, home games would be a great way to do that, but how do they find this morale when they can't even believe in this QB1 with Taven? I mean, he's new, he's a freshman, but I feel like it's fair to say he's shown himself as a QB1. But as you saw last game with Michigan, they still went back and forth. Yeah. I mean, how does IU find any morale going to this game when they can't even believe in their leader?
Well, I think that they need to go off of what Coach Allen said and saying they are not going to be flipping around anymore. Right. They're going to have one quarterback. They're going to stick with it. And, it's just tough for any quarterback coming into this type of situation. Already you get a midseason new offensive coordinator. Exactly. Things get switched around on you. You don't necessarily have the best weapons in the Big Ten. Tough offensive line. So now I think at this point you need to say as a team, this is our guy. We're going to stick with him. And moving forward, no matter what happens, he is going to be the guy that you support. I think you need to rally behind your players regardless of the outcome of any game.
And I think that could be so much with just like a confidence booster, right? I mean, let's say like they really stick to Taven, even if he starts rough, that can give him a little more of like, okay, I can do this, right? Like flow with the offense. I mean, as you look at Rutgers as well, I think with Rutgers, they've yet to win away, which I think is also a big deal. And they haven't really shown their best, right? With like, for example, Michigan State. That was a nail biter. I think everyone's on the edge of their seat. But I think, so going in with them, do you think this season has really shown how strong they are in the Big Ten? I mean, they're pretty high up there. I think they're floating in the middle like they were last year. But with these games so far, they haven't really had true competition besides that Michigan State game, which score set itself,
It's tough to say, really. The Big Ten is interesting this year. But overall, I think that with Rutgers going into the season, some people viewed this IU-Rutgers game as a potential win for IU. And now, there's maybe a spark of hope there. But realistically, people are thinking Rutgers is going to win this game. I think that they've surprised people a little bit this year. They've played a little bit better than people were expecting in a conference where that's not always the easiest thing to do. So I think that, for Rutgers, it's the real test for them is coming up. How can they stand against some of the best competition in the Big Ten? But being able to come to Indiana, like you said, grab their first road win of the season potentially, that would just be, it's going to be a crowd that's loud for IU, not usually too loud at Memorial Stadium, but it's homecoming.
Yeah, they keep it classy.
So, but overall, I think that you come in, you win this game, then you get some good momentum going into the hardest stretch of the season. Maybe they can surprise people even more.
Absolutely. I think what I'm excited for is I want Gavin Wimsatt, Rutgers quarterback, Kyle Monangai versus Taven Jackson and Jalen Lucas. I feel like that's the two duos. I feel like whatever duo actually produces the best, that's going to be the win.
Yeah.
I want to know what you're thinking, game score prediction. I mean, I felt like you're kind of towards IU, but Rutgers also might have stronger weapons.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I think that now for Indiana, there's a bit of a dip in talent overall. You just had two really tough games in Maryland and Michigan. I think it's a chance for the defense to get back on their feet overall. I think that they could have a good game here with a crowd behind them. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game overall, but I will still take Rutgers 24-13.
Okay, Rutgers. Okay, I'm going to be an IU fan today. And I'm going to go ahead and say IU's going to win this one. I just think the energy of homecoming, being at home, I think if they truly stick to Taven, I see IU coming out with this. I think I'm going to go 32-10. I think if IU really sticks to Taven, really get the offensive coordinator and
32-10?
Yeah. I know. But I really do feel like this could be a really good game for them.
Okay.
Maybe
crazier things have happened.
More trick plays maybe than optional plays, but we'll see. We'll see. With that being said, we are going to go ahead and see you guys next week after this huge Rutgers IU game. It's Liv Clements, Noel Fary. See you guys next time.